everybody, Pen here with Yogacises. We're back with Nicolle. This is part 2 of the podcast. We'll continue. We left off at the shamanic healing and shamanic shadow healing, and she started to go over the how the chakras in the throat and the heart and how it's then let's go from there.
Sure. Yeah, I had a little emergency with my daughter, so I had to break away from our podcast. So this is part 2, and where I left off was talking about the shamanic shadows healing and how I facilitate that. So we're going to pick up with the throat chakra, just in case I kind of rushed it a little bit. But basically, once we've kind of led you through into the connection and higher self and potentially connecting to your personal guides or loved ones or whoever. We then try to work on in tandem with the throat chakra. So that's where the focused energy is going. But with that is to connect to yourself and to your soul self. And a lot of that is kind of guided into seeing and feeling that connection to yourself and getting to connect by receiving answers from yourself as to what it is that you're holding on to. And a lot of times the reason that is important is because we're often very disconnected from ourselves from day to day, or we're out of tune of what our body or our emotions are telling us. And that's because that's a coping mechanism that we've adopted to avoid pain at all costs. However, healing doesn't take place when you ignore yourself, and yourself is trying to give you, messages, and you ignore it. So it's like trying to connect with yourself on that level so that you can actually be present and go a little bit deeper with yourself as to what they're willing to share with you. And a lot of times that can evolve into your inner child self trying to evoke or emote what they're going through, what they're holding on to, and what role you're playing in that. So with that awareness and seeing it for what it is, and perhaps the toxic relationship that you might have with yourself day to day, and seeing and feeling it for what it is on that level might leave such a strong imprint with you, so that in your waking reality you might better be able to enforce any sort of changes that would be necessary for you to honor yourself, right? And of course that's your choice, but you will have a pretty impactful connection in that way to hopefully give you the ability to honor or to prioritize honoring yourself. We then move on to your heart chakra, and a lot of that is to first allow you to take down your walls, because a lot of times we put a barrier up thinking it's to protect ourselves from outside pain, hurt, and suffering because of our learned, conditioned pain, hurt, and suffering that we've experienced in life or through other people that have impacted us. And so a lot of times we'll close ourselves off because we think it's protecting us, but really what that does is it creates a barrier and a barricade for love being received and love going out. And so again, promoting disconnection when that's in place. And because by virtue of law of attraction, all of your relationships to you are a mirror to you. So if you're wanting to connect with others, chances are that disconnect is probably because you are primarily disconnected to yourself. And that wall is paramount in that paradigm within yourself. So taking that down is really important. But of course, that's through your free will and free choice, and you get to experience what that looks like and feels like to you when you're in that space. You're also then guided to kind of do a de-weeding of your emotional garden. Because if you think about it in terms of like vibrationally, like your emotions implement the vibrations within your being as an imprint, kind of like a weed. So, for example, when you're born, you're not necessarily born with fear or anger or hatred or any of these low vibratory states. You kind of learn them through your incarnated experience. Now, that's not to say you can't have some of those imprints in, say, the womb, or things that you could potentially bring in from past lives. However, the past life stuff is not normally what we visit within this shamanic shadows. That's possible in a shamanic journey. But the shamanic shadows is working more about with what's current in this lifetime. And so when you're revisiting de-weeding your emotional garden, first is to identify what those vibrational emotions are that you're carrying that are seated within you, and how they may have grown and created more manifestations in your life by virtue of the vibration itself. And then accessing that by then identifying the original memory or experience that implanted that vibration in the first place. So it's kind of like more glimpses and snapshots, not to necessarily revisit it. It's more to identify it so that you can at least know where it started, and then pull out those weeds, those emotional states of being, and remove the connection to you as to how that was implanted in you on that level. And you're kind of doing the work of de-weeding it and seeing it for what it is. And once we've kind of done the de-weeding of that garden, if you will, that's when you can plant more of the vibrational states that you want more of. Because like I said, we are operating by the universal law of attraction amongst other universal laws. And so whether we're aware of it or not, you're creating. And so a lot of times we are unconsciously creating from those vibrational imprints that aren't serving you, because it's the stuff that you're holding on to that you don't know how to release. So kind of you doing the work by releasing those, removing those weeds, but then putting back in. So a lot of times if your energy has been focused on or has been caught up, if you will, in those low vibratory states, even if it's subconsciously or in the background, it still can be triggered into your reality in your experiences, because it's stuff that is still, even though energetically you may sweep things under the rug, just because you step over the rug doesn't mean your crap isn't still under there, right? So that's kind of the same concept here. But the same thing, like a lot of times we have trouble creating what we want because we don't even know what that vibration of what we want is. For example, unconditional love. We all elusively have this concept of what we think it is, but it's not experientially usually what we know what that is, right? So it's kind of like about putting those vibrations into you that you want more of, so that you can have a more byproduct environment of creating the right environment of vibrations that you want to manifest into your life, and be more of a match to it vibrationally, right? Then moving on down to your solar plexus chakra here is normally where we work more with your inner child self and have that inner child self lead you to a particular memory or two that they find that they've been stuck due to trauma, that they need your help to bring them back with you and or resolve that memory for them, because that consciousness may have fragmented due to the trauma that may have took place, which could be, trauma can be from one person really extreme, but it could be also something that could be minor in the bigger scheme of things if you were to compare oranges to apples. But that child self may have given it so much meaning that it could still be a trauma, even if it was something small. Your inner child self may have made it mean more than what it actually would have actually meant in the moment, due to the fact that they may have lacked the awareness of the situation, and so they're still drawing from their experience of it. But that part of you may have been stuck in time and been fragmented. So your inner child self might need to be kind of reclaimed and have her needs met in that memory, where she can shift and alter, or he can alter that memory so it no longer creates that cyclical effect in your reality in the background, creating from that injured version of you. So it's kind of like bringing that part of you forward. So that's really powerful for a lot of people, because it no longer carries the meaning that used to. Then we kind of work into sacral chakra. That's really about giving your inner child self her voice to confront anybody from your life that has harmed you or hurt you or negatively impacted you. So it's kind of like she gets the opportunity to speak her mind and really get things off of her chest to confront any individual energetically from her past that she's still holding on to unresolved feelings because of, or that may have altered, or he, as I said, may have altered her course, or his or her course. So being able to confront them, and then being guided into choosing whether or not to forgive this individual by first seeing them shrink in size to their inner child self, so that they can put into context that this person, even though they may have been an adult in the time of harming that person's growth and as far as their inner child self, if you will, that adult self, that adult version of that person may have caused the harm. But if you really think about it, pain begets more pain, or hurt begets more hurt. So a lot of times, if you were to see in context that that person is also a wounded inner child that is acting out or maybe harming others from a lack of consciousness or awareness, or passing their pain forward, it gives you the opportunity to see them on your level of hurt and suffering, to empathize, okay, not to justify what they did or said or however they impacted you. So it's not to justify it, but it's to kind of give it, give you the possibility to put yourself in the space of empath, to see that they too may be suffering and causing more suffering because of what's not healed in them and what they may have been raised with, right? But again, you being able to choose to forgive, where forgiveness really is very liberating, because it's more for you than for the other person. So even though you might be forgiving the other person, really is you, it's experientially, it's like you putting down your own shackles of all that anger and resentment and hurt and all the things that you were holding on to because that other person, that you took forward with you throughout life, that you're carrying on to. So the only person that is really suffering at the end of the day is you, by what you're holding on to because of what you justify the other person caused in you, right? So if you get to put down your shackles just because you chose forgiveness, you then feel the byproduct of feeling light afterwards, because it's like putting down your baggage. So it's a very liberating experience, but it is free will. So you still get to choose, and it's the choice of that person. But being walked through the understanding of that, it's a lot easier for that inner child self to make that choice to let go the burden of what they're holding on to. Then we kind of go into root chakra, which is located in the pelvic region. A lot of that has to do with kind of connecting you to Mother Earth's energy and revisiting your consciousness in the womb state, in the on the consciousness level, as you being kind of like the fetus, having all of your needs being met. So energetically streaming all that energy from Mother Earth, that nurturance, that love, all your vital needs, oxygen, nutrients, support, shelter, all those things, feeling protected and safe, bringing all those energies into your being and just kind of like reviving yourself energetically from that space. So that's more of like kind of like a completion and kind of bringing you back to kind of feeling a little bit more whole and lighter, because you've kind of done a lot of the work. So it's very deep, it's very intensive, it can be very emotional for people depending on what they came in with. And then I lead them back into body after all that.
That's awesome. You answered my question about the whole past life thing. You kind of talked about that. So
yeah, so past life. Sometimes, I mean, unless that's purposely what that person wanted to connect to and set the intention for. Otherwise, it's all possible, because sometimes your guides might want you to go there, because if there's something from that past life that is impacting you in this life that needs your awareness and attention, then you can begin to, or your guides might lead you to that particular lifetime, so you can see it for what it is and how its residue is affecting you now.
That's so cool, because I haven't heard anybody talk about chakras from this perspective, so it's good to look at it, different views of how to balance.
Yeah, so the shamanic journey is where that we would normally maybe go into past life stuff or future self. You can channel your future self. Like I said, anything's really possible. And in that, I learned so much, like I said, because all my clients are channeling. So sometimes I get to sneak in questions too from a higher perspective and see where the correlation is from how messages from different vehicles or different clients might come through, and where there's consistency is where I can be like, okay, I can buy this new information, I can absorb it, because that's kind of like how I like to play, like double jeopardy, or not double jeopardy, but like devil's advocate, like to where I find like higher truth consistent is if new information comes into me and I want validation on that, I like to kind of have individuals who don't necessarily have a perspective on the matter, that depending on what they connect to see what they channel and see where the consistencies lie. So that's how I can be like, okay, this is relevant. This is valid.
It's awesome. So you also do the 6th and the 7th chakra as well?
That's kind of the lead up process. So third eye, cleaning up your mind, and crown chakra is connecting you to the spirit realms. And then I go into throat, and then I go down. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, got it.
So we start with mind to get your mind out of the way, and then crown chakra is to kind of bridge you, and then throat chakra is when you're doing the work and on the way down.
Because I read a book recently, talks about, you know, how people say there are more than 7, there are a lot of chakras, and there's this one in particular went in detail about the chakra below the root chakra and the one above the crown chakra that's like this floating. Do you tackle those other chakras besides 7 main ones?
Not necessarily for the shamanic shadows. There are other chakras that are kind of like cosmically impacted. I would say that your astral self is more exploring that work than I'm necessarily working on it specifically energetically. Because like with the shamanic shadows is where I work mostly with the 7 major chakras in tandem with the journey, which normally would last on average 3 to 4 hours, sometimes longer for some people. So it's pretty intensive. But again, because we're doing so much deep tissue work, if you will, on that level, we kind of leave it off. We kind of leave it with that.
And those sessions, you don't break them up, right? You kind of just finish from the beginning to the end, everything. Usually,
some people we might have to, like, depending on how intense their journey is going for them, sometimes we might have to break it into a second journey. Sorry, my son's crying in the background, but I think my husband's got it, checking on him, but so you might hear some baby crying. As far as repeat that last question, I'm sorry.
If you break up the sessions to
Oh yeah. So if the person's experience is really intense, because say they've gone through a lot of trauma in life, sometimes we might have to kind of break it into maybe 2 sessions to do the full shadows journey, and I'll know based on how they're responding and where they're at, you know, because it's a lot of work, you know, but I try to get as much in one session, so it's kind of like moving boulders out of the way. And that way you can better work on the stones if you can see them for what they are, because you have boulders out of the way so you can see the little stuff. Or another session might be necessary to revisit some of the things to integrate further, or to add extra focus.
Mm-hmm. And what about, I know everybody's different based on their past experiences and what they're currently going through, but on average, like how many sessions do you work with clients?
So I get this question more in the form of like, how often should I come see you, or is it like once a month, is it once a week, you know? And what I communicate with people, I'm not like a traditional like therapist or counselor or anything like that, where you're like, oh, you have to see me once a month or on a regular routine. I like to, the whole point of it is to empower you to be more in tune with yourself. So that being said, that one session is really powerful, which I normally recommend starting with the shamanic shadows healing and clearing all that stuff out, but then paying attention to what you're processing after the session, how you're feeling, what needs addressing. And if it's not within your scope of being able to navigate on your own, that's when you can be like, okay, I need to get in for another session, which some people might be like next month, might be 6 months, might be another year, maybe 2 years down the road. So it's more about what that person wants to gain and or what else they want to explore and experience. Because like I said, after that, it would be the shamanic journey healing, which therefore is really much based on your intentions, and therefore is more fluid in what is possible to explore and experience. And so it's much more customized to you in those attentions, if you will. So
that my goals to just get the
Huh?
experience. I said, I got to put this down as one of my goals. Got to try this at some point.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's definitely, I mean, like I said, from what I'm witnessing, it's very powerful. Um, I'm always in awe at like what people experience, because like I'm kind of like vicariously there with them, but I'm not seeing what they're seeing and what they're exploring. So that's the part that I don't get to have the same experience as them, but I learn so much because, like I said, they're channeling a lot of times some really cool stuff. The shamanic shadows healing probably a little bit less so because it's more working on self, but especially the shamanic journey healings, because that's, like I said, we might be navigating some really cool, interesting things, you know.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So for sound healing and color therapy, how do they come into play, and do you do those separately or together, or
A lot of times that would be involved in the shamanic work. I do pair sound and color light therapy with it as well, but it can also be isolated in its own service, depending on what we're doing. Or if I have, or I especially do a lot more sound therapy in like my events or group ceremonies. In which I have like giant singing bowls, and then I have like hanging tuning pipes that have all the different unique frequencies for like all the organs in the body, the minerals, the planets, the DNA, the brainwave states, and the harmonic frequencies. So I have like a whole range, because again, we are all energy, and everything is frequency. And so we are very susceptible and receptive to being influenced by sound frequencies and light frequencies. So color light therapy having vibrational impact on what you experience.
Do you have any recommendations on books or resources for like everything that you've been talking about? And of course, your websites and your contact information and everything. I know you sent those to me already. I'll post them. You're freezing up. Can you still hear me?
It kind of cut out for a second, so will you repeat the question?
Oh, okay. Yeah, in terms of recommendations for books and resources, I know you list all your website and how to reach you, and I don't know if you have any like events or workshops or courses.
I'm about to post one, but I'm probably going to do one for this upcoming new moon, but I'm in the process of putting up my next set of events. So I don't have that formulated yet, because I usually only do 1 to maybe 2 a month myself. And normally I'll invite people through my newsletter, which you can sign up to on my website, which is www.holistic, spelled with a W, -vitality.com. And then I'll also post it to my social media page on Facebook for my business page. So I'll usually link the events to that. But obviously you'll learn much more about my services on my website. There's still some room for adding to my website, which I've kind of slacked off on, adding some information on certain services. But again, based on talking to the person and consulting with them, I can kind of better guide them on how I may be of service to them, or where I might therefore recommend leading them into exploring what's next based on what they're seeking and what they're needing. And so that may not necessarily end up with me being the full-time destination, if you will. I encourage people to explore what might serve them and where their growth is taking them. I'm just I might just be a step along the way if they resonate with what I am presenting here. But I was going to go over the quantum biofeedback machine, because that is also possible to do from afar or remotely, because remember, everything is energetic, and we're not limited by space and time. And that's known on a quantum level, and in this case, the quantum biofeedback. So it's this sophisticated technology that, if in person, would connect you with a head harness, wrist straps, and ankle straps that connects to the biofeedback device, and therefore that connects to the computer, which has over 900 sophisticated programming on it. If in case it's remotely, I would just connect you energetically by plugging in your details as far as birthday and your name and where you're currently located, and your birth date and time, so that kind of like syncs to you. And then what I do is then you send what's called the main matrix scan, which has over 10,000 energetic signatures, and it sends it to you like subtly, kind of like a lie detector test. And as it sends it to you at a fast rate, you respond to each energetic signature like that lie detector test. And based on the results, it's kind of like playing detective as to what are you responding to energetically that's outside of the norm, as to what you might be flagging for. Now, this could give you clues as to what is problematic in your well-being, or what you're reacting to, or if there's certain parasites that are affecting you negatively, or are there remedies that your body is wanting more of. And biofeedback kind of likes to get to the bottom of looking at the cause as to what's causing problems versus trying to diagnose or treat a symptom, right? And so a lot of times the symptom would be its own diagnosis, if you will, or it's like the problem state, or you want to look at what the problem state is behind that symptom, should I say. And on top of that, it can send harmonizing frequencies to entrain you into well-being by sending you the harmonizing frequency per those signatures. So there's a lot of information that can come through the first session, especially as to a sense of awareness of what's going on, which I feel like there is a lot of times a big dissatisfaction in the medical community or allopathic treatments by, pretty much doctors playing process of elimination to get to the bottom of what's going on, which can be very expensive for people. So I find this device, this technology, to be very powerful and empowering in taking your well-being into your own hands, or to getting a second look or test done. If it flags you for something you want to get a look at, if you've gotten those clues, maybe requesting certain things from your doctors to validate if that's something you want to be, that it should be of concern, But it also has, like I said, 900 sophisticated programming that I can go in and do further discovery or do energy entrainments through. So it's pretty cool what it can pick up on.
I'm glad you brought this up. I did have a question about it. And in terms of the whole testing and how to get people to be interested or willing to give this a try, who are like non-believers or who are like kind of in between, not certain whether this thing is real, like is it really going to make a difference or
right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times the people that are seeking this stuff out are the ones that are fed up with the old system that isn't working for them, right? That's when they're more likely to be open-minded to alternative modalities, because if their life is on their line and their survival is on the line, you know what I mean, that you tend to be a little bit more open-minded if you have reached that space of dissatisfaction with your current treatment plans, and I'm not going to say it's meant to replace your work with your current physicians, but I would say a lot of times it becomes the dissatisfaction with the medical system that people might seek alternatives in the first place. And like I say, you're going to be your own testimonial and your own validation and your own proof as to what works for you, and you won't know until you explore or try something to find where you stand on that as to what you find is valid for you. So yes, having an open mind with any of my services tends to be a prerequisite, because if not, that would be in the way of you maybe exploring some of these things in the first place, and so I'm here for those that are especially seeking something alternative, because that's what I offer. And that's what I believe in, and that's what I see results in, not only for myself, but like I said, what I have come to find for my clients as well.
Right, it will be more difficult, especially that if they don't have the prerequisite of believing that it will work, then the whole mindset, getting them to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not they're here to believe it, I mean, I think for me, it's the open-minded enough to get you in the door to try it out.
Yeah.
Whether you decide you believe it after or not, that's still for you to determine based on your experience. But I think having an open mind enough to be willing to try something new and see what comes of it, I think that's where I would say the prerequisite would likely to be for you to have the best results for it. Because yes, your mindset, no matter what, is always going to play and influence your results. Like for example, when it comes to your health, if you were to go to your doctor and he were to give you the diagnosis that you only had 4 weeks to live, you're either going to take that and say, oh, he has more authority over me because he knows what he's talking about. I'm about to die. Well, then you've cemented your fate because you've bought into the belief that your life is about to be no longer, right? So mind over matter, you will create that fulfillment of that if you buy that's what's going to happen. But, you know, if you're the kind of person that says, no, I don't believe this, I still have a long time to live, and I'm going to take whatever steps I need to take to put myself into a better space, to improve my health and well-being on all levels, not just physically, but because a lot of times the cause as to why you're suffering physically might not be caused by a physical reason. It may be because of the unresolved emotional stuff or impact on in regards to unresolved traumas, for example, or how you have perceived something in your life that has like energetically, chronically affected you, right? And some things may be, like I said, have some influence from past life influences, which I'm finding out with certain individuals that seems to come up for them that may directly be linked to their physical condition in this lifetime. So there could be that link too. But you don't want to treat yourself like the Newtonian model, saying that you're just moving body parts, you know, you're just parts of a machine essentially. Because because you're a whole, you have multi-dimensional aspects to you, you know, emotionally, mentally, physically, and on a soul level. And all those areas need to be brought into the space of healing and integration for you to work fully on a whole level. So all those areas need to be explored, especially if you're experiencing, say, physical illness, because physical illness is usually the densified, manifested version of what might have been affected on a subtle level that may have densified in you physically. But again, that's not the only reason, because there are contributing factors physically, obviously. Like if you eat junk food and are thinking negatively daily, you know, that energetically you're vibrating lower, which is you're more resonant to illness in that state of being, just by virtue of your vibration and your energy, you know.
It's really a lot to look into. It's very dynamic, and it becomes more dynamic when you're tapping into the energy thing, where sometimes it's hard for people to see it, especially at the beginning. And it's gonna make them wonder, like you mentioned, with the whole your intuition type of thing, like when is it your like type of premonition or type of thing, or whether it's just thought. You gotta differentiate all these different little details and be aware of those, right?
Yeah, awareness is huge, because you can't do anything with that which you're not aware of.
Right.
You know, you can't make changes if you're not aware there's changes that need to be made, or what those changes would be if you were to make them.
Exactly.
So for both those modalities, I find that just having the awareness is being a key component for change to be able to be made in the first place, before you can see, you know, results in your reality and or you physically. And so I would say, especially addressing your internal reality. So doing that shamanic work, I think, is very powerful to working on that internal reality, because that is what is essentially projecting out into your experienced holographic reality that you experience, that you believe to be as is the proof that you experience, if that makes sense. Because you've manifested it to be that. It's like a mirror to you. And so if you're unsatisfied with anything in your reality, physically, or your relationships, or what you see, you know, it's worth exploring. What is it about me that's creating that?
It's true. Yeah.
So, and I know you have somebody probably on your next call, right?
She got off. I don't know. I'll contact her, reach out to her later.
Okay. I was like, I don't want to like take away from her time, but so yeah, I don't know.
Questions I have for you.
That what?
Those are my questions.
Pretty much. Yeah, no worries. I'm glad that you took the time to interview me, and which for me is something that my guides and keeps getting communicated even through all my clients, or not all my clients, but a lot of my clients. is that I need to put myself more out there, and I guess I haven't been doing that enough apparently. And so when I saw your request for people to interview, I thought that might be a good opportunity, especially because what I offer isn't mainstream, and so it takes a lot of educating people about what it is and how it works before people might see it as something that is relevant to what they're wanting to explore. But if they don't even know it exists, then they wouldn't even know to look for it, right? And so I have to kind of be good at putting it out in front of people, to communicate it, to educate about it, to express it, so that way if people do resonate with it, they know how to either find me or maybe or other practitioners that might be doing some similar works, so yeah.
It's just a coincidence that you do the I can never say it right. Oh my gosh. Shamanic healing, and this next person, she does the same thing. So I was like, what a coincidence. It just happened to be on the same day.
Oh, the next girl that you're working with too? What's her name?
Leanne. No, wait a minute. I don't even. I gotta look back.
Okay, no.
Leanne. Yeah, not Leanne.
Mine's Nicolle Leanne.
Oh my gosh, my pronunciation today. I don't know what's going on. Elaine. Yeah,
Elaine. It's probably because my middle name's Leanne, so you might.
Oh yeah, probably.
Switched it up. That's okay. Cool. Well, yeah, I don't know unless you have other questions, but yeah, I would say if anybody was curious, most services I can do remotely, like the astrology readings, law of attraction coaching, spiritual mentoring, which is really just intuitively connecting to what it is that which a lot of that also gets processed into the consult of the shamanic work, because I try to gift them some perspective in the beginning as well. But sometimes people want more one-on-one just on that level, or the astrology readings, which also gives so much more insight as well in how what is innately their personality versus like just experientially engaging with their reality and identifying themselves based on maybe how they react to things, like, oh, I'm stubborn, or oh, I'm this, you know what I mean? So but when you get to really assess what is innately part of your personality based on your blueprint of your astrological reading and of your chart, interpreting your chart, it kind of gives people a little bit of comfort knowing that it's not because they're just such weirdos or different or whatever. I mean, although they're uniquely different, their own unique ingredient list, if you will, as to what makes them, outside of the comparisons of everybody else that may be of the same sun sign as you, which is very surfacey. So it allows people to kind of get a glimpse into themselves on that level, which I think is really powerful for them. And then, like I said, the shamanic work, the quantum biofeedback can be done remotely as well. It's mostly the sound healing and spectrochrome therapy and PEMF and anything that's technology based that is meant for only in person, like the Photon Sound Beam machine. That would be an in-person service. But the quantum biofeedback can, even though that's science and technology based, it can be it can work remotely as well. So like I said, I'm always about adding more into what it is they offer, so it can be as comprehensive as possible. And so as I grow and evolve and add in things, the more I'm sure would be available, and or lead people to those that offer something that I don't, that they could benefit from based on how I understand it to serve. So yeah.
Great. So I'll share everything, all your the links in the description, and then if they have questions, they can reach out to you, and
yeah, I appreciate that.
Share it. That'll be great as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you, and enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully I'll be able to connect with anybody who's wanting to take this next step on their journey, and I would love to be of service in whatever way I can be. So
definitely. Thank you.